You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Bucket list, then you're in the right place because it's Monday night. It is 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Eastern Time. It is 10 p.m. and that means it's time for Mission Log Live. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm Holly Amos, and tonight we are continuing our review of Star Trek Picard Season 3 with Episode 4, No-Win Scenario. As always, if we want to hear from you in the Facebook chat and live with us, you know what to do. Click on the Zoom link or give us a ring by using the one tap from your smartphone, or you can call us at 669-900-6833, enter the meeting code and the password that you see in the show notes.
So it's great to have everyone here. Holly, it's great to see you. Can you tell us a little bit about your new setup? Because I think it's fabulous, and I think everyone in the audience is probably trying to pick out what's going on behind you.
I'm at the Roddenberry offices.
And your interpretive dance means?
These lights are motion censored, so I have to keep them on. But I picked this room because there's so many cool things on that they have on display. Look at all of the things there's a bat list.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And thanks for showing us your background. But in case Holly's lights dim, that's just an homage to Titan lighting versus, say, J.J. Abrams' 2009 lighting. So you're getting the best of both worlds here.
J.J. Apple Store, and then when the lights go off, I look like I'm on, the Titan Bridge.
Let's say hi to everyone who's in the chat because the chat's going off tonight, which it always is, and we're very thankful for that. So I don't know, I asked you this, Holly, before we got on the air. For some reason, your dad always manages to have number one in the chat position. So hello, Bob Amos, and your mom's here too. So hello, Mom Amos.
Hello. Do you not remember? Hello, Bob and Margie.
I didn't want to get that formal. I know Bob. I can call Bob out because his name's in the chat. Hello, Mark. Thanks for being here. Cosmo. One of the Pauls, we have Paul Harvith here. Hope you're feeling better. You said you're a little under the weather, and I know it's snowing up where you are, so that's not so great. What is great, we have Jane here, and we have, let's see if another Paul is here. No, but we have John Arminio. Thanks for being here, John. Missed saying the last name Arminio for a while. We have James here, James Young. We have Jim McMahon, David, Brett. Thank you for being here. We have another Paul Wright, Paul Dubb. So we have two. Holly is still doing her interpretive dance to make sure that we have the proper lighting in her background. Michael, Alan, Dave, a lot of familiar faces. Heather, thanks for being here. Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Carlos.
Champion says hello from down the hall. He's literally down the hall from me.
I think he's actually messing with your lighting, so don't believe a word he says if he's not. I really do think he is. And we also have Paul Troutwine here. So we do have our Paul Fecta here, the trifecta of Pauls, which is obviously awesome all the time, every time. We have a lot going on Mission Log this week, as we always do. Our Thursday show is going to be dropping this week with Futures End Part 1 and 2. So we've took both episodes and combined them into one little bit of a supersized episode, but it was fun. It's either Star Trek The Voyager Home or Voyager Star Trek The Voyager Home. It's very the Star Trek The Voyage Home-esque, right? That's the episode?
Yes.
Yeah. And
it's a great two-part episode.
Yeah, it's fun. We had a lot of fun doing it, a lot of fun breaking it down, a lot of fun seeing 90s tech, 90s fashion, and what passes for a microcomputer back in 1996.
Yeah.
So, all that kind of fun.
My lights just came back on. Great. Okay.
Holly, how many lights are there?
I don't know.
Are there at least 4? I'm feeding you the best line in Star Trek history.
No, I'm looking. There are 4 lights, actually.
Yes. Speaking of bright lights, there's a big bright light that's going on with Mission Log in terms of our YouTube channel. So did you know, Holly, and people out there, did you know that Mission Log the Orville and Mission Log Prodigy are available as podcasts and videos? And if you didn't know that, you're going to have to check out what's going on with our new content. So if you want to catch up on recent episodes like the upcoming Mission Log the Orville interview dropping this Wednesday, March 15th with composer Joel McNeely.
That's cool.
Yeah, right. He talks everything from the Orville to Young Indiana Jones with Captain Mike and Jessica Lynn Verdi. You don't want to miss it. So make sure you go to youtube.com/Roddenberry Entertainment and subscribe to Mission Log the Orville so that you get all the notifications and you'll be good. You'll know when that interview happens on March 15th. And of course, make sure that you stay in touch with all of our podcasts at podcasts.roddenberry.com. Are you excited about this episode? I'm excited to get to this episode recap. Are you?
Yeah, you said that you kept it pretty condensed, so we're going to find out.
I tried, but I was telling Holly this off the air, and in a little bit of a text exchange with Earl and John, I said, you know what, it's really difficult trying to get these new style of new Star Trek episodes like recapped really short. It's not like doing, say, like, Voyager or Deep Space Nine, where I don't think the episodes are like as dense, because these episodes
No.
dense. Right?
Well, because they were bottle episodes with, A storyline and B storyline, and this is a different way of storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot going on and a lot of loose ends that they're going to have to wrap up, which has been the case with the last few seasons of several of the shows. So we'll see how it works out.
Oh, here we go with Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 4, No-Win Scenario. Oh, wait a second. I got to do this because I can't really see my script. So this is John Champion. This fashion statement is for you. There we go. All right. 5 years ago, Admiral Picard sits down to lunch at the 10 Forward Avenue bar and is approached by a group of very young cadets whose questions he assuages with some sage advice. No matter how bleak or unwinnable the situation, as long as they remain steadfast in their dedication to one another, they are never without hope. In the present, acting Captain Riker is neck deep in no-win scenario decisions to keep the Titan's power online for as long as possible. He then visits Picard's quarters and confesses to Jean-Luc when he and Deanna buried their son Thaddeus, it filled him with an inconsolable emptiness. Riker advises Picard to make whatever peace he needs with Jack Crusher, because this may be the end for all of them. Meanwhile, Seven discovers the body of Ensign Foster hidden in his quarters and reports to Riker, who surprisingly orders her to keep quiet about this and to try and flesh out the changeling in an unofficial capacity, since she is still at this time relieved of duty. She then reluctantly meets with Shaw, who tells her that even though changelings perfectly look the part, they don't get all the finer details quite right. He also tells her to find the changeling's regeneration receptacle thing, which would have traces of residue for analysis, which would help the ship's sensors find the shapeshifter. And after making short work of Foster's quarters, Seven finds a small Bajoran-style vase hidden in one of the light fixtures. In sickbay, Picard finds Beverly, and with just a look, she knows the situation is bleak. Picard asks her if he can steal Jack for a moment and takes him to the holodeck, specifically Picard's 10 Forward Avenue program. Over a few whiskeys, Jean-Luc and Jack try to catch up on so much lost time between them. On the Shrike, Vadic makes contact with her superiors. She slices off her own hand, which then turns into what looks like tissue similar to a changeling. It floats before Vadic, morphs into a face of sorts, and orders the pursuit of Jack Crusher at all costs. Back on the Titan, Picard finds himself explaining how he and Jack's namesake, Beverly's husband, managed to survive a 10-hour slog of flying blind in a stolen shuttlecraft back to the Stargazer, after a joyride to keep a romantic interlude went horribly sideways. When Shaw appears, he makes sure that all in earshot know when he and Picard first met. It was the Battle of Wolf 359, and Shaw survived by sheer dumb luck, as he was 1 out of 10 out of 50 to be picked to board the USS Constance's remaining life pod. Shaw made sure that everyone knew that it was Picard, as Locutus of Borg, who was responsible for 11,000 dead, and he was the only Borg so deadly they gave him his own name. Picard diffuses the situation by leaving, along with Jack, who follows after him. On her way to have the residue analyzed, Seven is attacked by the actual changeling, who, after being hit by Seven's phaser fire, manages to escape into the wall vents. After leaving 10 Forward, Picard and Jack run into Beverly, who tells him that the energy spikes hitting the ship are actual pregnancy contractions coming from the nebula itself. Jack believes they can ride these waves in lieu of having no power. Trying to sell Riker on this, he thinks that the idea is too risky, but Beverly convinces him that because they are all together again, the one thing that they are best at is trusting each other and working together. And with that, Riker comes around and sets the plan in motion. Picard and Seven persuade Shaw to help, needing his old grease monkey skills to pry open the warp nacelle covers. As Shaw dismantles the nacelle venting controls, he tells Seven that this would be the right place and time for the changeling to strike. Seven contacts Riker, who acknowledges her concerns, but returns his attention to making sure all the details are ready for riding this energy wave, because they only have enough power for one shot. And with all systems ready, Riker steps aside and gives Picard the center chair, since he's the only one on board with any experience flying blind. Shaw has 2 minutes to finish his assignment before the next energy pulse. He's nearly finished when LaForge arrives to help. She is immediately met by Seven's phaser and is instantly killed when she addresses Seven as Commander Hansen, a detail that the Changeling didn't know about the real LaForge, who would have called her Commander 7, out of respect. Nice. With the warp covers exposed and all remaining power diverted to the engines, the shockwave finally hits and pushes the Titan uncontrollably forward. Picard and Jack use sensors to help LaForge maneuver around several large asteroids in their way so that they wouldn't lose the wave's momentum. As the cascading pulse pushes them to safety, warp power is also being charged as well. However, right before they are about to leave the nebula, the Shrike is standing by to intercept. Riker orders LaForge to tractor beam one of the asteroids behind them. He then orders the Titans to cut engine power and the tractor beam, slinging the asteroid right into the Shrike, which suffers massive damage, forcing Vadic to withdraw. For now. Once out of the nebula, the crew watched in wonder as it gave birth to a multitude of jellyfish-like life forms, the kind Beverly reminds all of why they are out here in the first place, to seek out new life. And with that, Riker orders all hands to boldly get the hell out of here. The Changeling Saboteur is dead, the Shrike is crippled, and the Titan is returning home. Riker finds a quiet moment to tell Deanna how this last mission has changed him for the better. Picard's recent memories of 10 Forward allowed him to remember that Jack was there and did try to reach out to him. That one moment when he told the cadets that Starfleet was the only family he ever needed. And Jack, well, the nightmares and red visions continue as he stares anxiously at the mirror in his quarters while a voice whispers to him, "Find me." The end.
Dun, dun, dun.
And the first kind of arc of this particular season comes to a close. Awaiting the next arc.
I was thinking that I kind of felt like them getting out of this particular scenario happened too quickly. But on the flip side of that, I always feel like when they stretch something like that out for the entirety of the 10 episodes, I get bored. So I'm contradicting myself, but I feel like maybe we could have gone one more episode with them being stuck there, and it would have been better. But to have this be the main problem dragged out over like the 10 episodes, I would have gotten bored. So
probably a little bit too long, yeah. And now we get to experience, say, how they're going to resolve Raffi and Worf, and how they're going to bring them into the picture, how they're going to bring, Brent Spiner into the picture, how they're going to bring Deanna into the picture. So
right.
We
saw Deanna a little bit on this. I mean, she was on the video screen, but we finally got to see her a little bit more.
Yeah. I wonder if they're all going to eventually be on screen all together. I don't think that Terry Matalas would deny us that one scene.
I would hope not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope we get to see them all
because
together.
They're doing a great job right now of kind of doing these little disparate stories, and then all of a sudden, somewhere along in the climax is going to be all of them working together. Kind of like what Beverly was saying. As long as we're all together, there's nothing that we can't accomplish. There's there's no way we can lose hope, but there's nothing that we can't overcome. That feels so very Star Trek again, in that sense. And I found that just an incredibly beautiful moment. Also, she kind of Miyagi Riker in a way when she brought up Deanna, saying look, I know you're feeling desperate, but Deanna would say, trust in all of us. And I like how that turned him around. I know we have a couple callers already in line, and we're going to get to them in a second, but I have to ask you, and I'm going to ask everyone else here a question. Is Jonathan Frakes living his best Star Trek life right now? Right?
Yes.
Because directing wise, the last 2 episodes have been some of the best of the newest Star Trek that I've seen. And in this episode, I'm not ashamed to say this, there were a couple times where I was flat out crying because of the depth that he brought out of Riker.
Yeah. So one of the things in this episode that I took a note on that I really connected with, and I feel like his directing of these 2 episodes are a result of these these are some of the best episodes that he's directed, in my opinion, simply because he's dealing with characters that he knows really well, but that everybody knows really well because they've been with us for 30 plus years. One of the things I really liked about this episode is Riker essentially saying that he doesn't believe in an afterlife. when Thaddeus died, he essentially told Picard, like, I didn't feel anything in terms of like comfort because I don't really believe in an afterlife. I don't either. And so that comfort, I connected with him on that. Oh, my lights went off again. I'm just going to leave them off. Right. I connected with him on that from that standpoint because I don't have that comfort either. And so when I have to deal with, questions of grief and stuff like that, it's there is no comfort. And I understand what he meant.
I mean, it's such an interesting contrast where you take a character like his, or take any of them, in the Star Trek universe, and they're out there exploring, seeking out strange new life and new civilizations, and they're seeing things that are unexplainable, things that are beyond like comprehension. So you would believe that there would be something past the veil, and they doesn't believe it. I think that's the most heartbreaking thing, because after he saw what happened to Thaddeus, that mortality that's so finite, everything is just either. It's very binary. It either exists or it doesn't, right?
Right.
After he's spent his entire career out there, among the stars, seeing things that are unexplainable, right? And that really just, it kind of shifted everything when you're really thinking about who he is now and then where he's starting to reemerge from after all this despair. It's an incredible character arc, really, that's going on for him. I want to get to one or two more things before I get to our first caller. Chris, thanks for being patient with us. But let's talk about the F-bomb controversy again.
Yeah.
And why?
I mean, it's not, I don't care either way. I see how it's controversial for people, but they were on network TV and they couldn't use it. And I feel like there was a lot of scenarios that would have warranted bad language, frustrated language, and they just couldn't because of the network. It feels more organic to me, actually, to have the characters say bad words. Yeah.
The strange thing is, and it's kind of like when you look at, say, the argument. So, there are people out there, with their comments saying that. Not in our chat is wonderful, but on social media saying, okay, why can't they write more creatively? Why do they have to use profanity? But then they use examples of, look at how these other properties created their own language to use profanity. But that just says that you want to use profanity, you're just not allowed to by, say, rules and regulations. But if you could, you would, because you're writing something to use profanity, even though it's disguised as another language. Firefly was notorious for it. Joss Whedon wrote all of his scripts using Chinese or Mandarin or some form of like future Chinese to swear up and down every episode because it gets past censors. But they're real profanity in other languages. Same thing as merde, as Picard has used several times because it's a different language, but it's still profanity. Right. The show's also like, obviously it would be controversial if, Prodigy threw an F-bomb in there because it's a children's show, but like, this is not a children's show either. And I think that, this is supposed to be the future of us. Like, this isn't a made up world in terms of like, in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. This is supposed to be us a few hundred years from now. Right.
So it feels organic that the characters would use that kind of language. As people in the chat are saying, colorful metaphors. Exactly.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting thing that it's that controversy has lasted this far into knowing the product. This is the product of this particular series using this particular direction, in the writing. But, that's neither here nor there. It's just something that, just interesting to talk about. I still find it fascinating that it's a discussion point. But hey, you know what? That's just me. That's just you, Holly. Let's see what our first caller has to say. Thank you for being patient. Chris, welcome back. Good to see you.
Good to see you, my man. Yeah, I do want to talk about some other stuff, but just really quickly on the profanity thing. I think it's interesting to note that Patrick ad-libbed that. Like, that wasn't in the script. He was just sort of in the moment it came out, and Terry Matalas and, like, in the editing room was like, no, that was good. That was authentic. Just sort of that speaks to, like, yes, it is a thing that happens. And
right.
So yeah, just wanted to put that out there in case people hadn't heard that, because I thought it was interesting that was Patrick and not the writers.
So we're at this, looking over at this entire arc, say, of 4 episodes, and if you can call it, I think it's an arc. I think, it's coming to a conclusion that's going into the next chapter. What are your thoughts, Chris? I know that, you're pretty diligent, in your viewing, and you watch episode and you take notes and you study and you pay attention. So where are you at with it right now, or how are you feeling about it?
I am very much enjoying myself. I'm enjoying seeing everyone back and seeing that, like, time has passed. You can sort of feel the weight of history, not just in Picard, but also in Riker and Gates. And I will also say I just love Shaw. Like, Shaw might be my new favorite character of the new people.
I was waiting for us to learn what that psychological profile comment was about, and the Wolf 359. That's probably one of it explains so much about him. It explains why he has disdain toward Picard. It explains why he has disdain toward Seven. Like, it explains so much with one scene.
And I love it. I love it because also it's like, that was like the obvious answer, right? Is everyone, even in episode 1, people are like, oh, maybe he was at Wolf 359. And I think it's credit to Todd that he took the, quote unquote, obvious, answer and just gave that beautiful monologue. You're like, I get chills every time. You're like, man, that is good stuff. So yeah, I really like Shaw. I think he's on a path to redemption, but this has been a good sort of opening arc, and I'm curious to see what the next 3 or 4 are. We go 4, and then maybe 2 as an epilogue. We'll see. I don't know.
I was waiting for.
I was going to ask both of you, do you guys think that Shaw is too emotionally compromised to be a captain right now, though?
That's a good question.
Like, on the
because
one
that's
hand,
always something that's being questioned, right? Like, if you are too emotionally compromised, you have to step down.
I mean, is he only emotionally compromised because Picard is on board?
That's the thing, right?
Well, not just Picard, though. Seven, too. I mean, obviously, Wolf 359 was Picard, but Seven is a former Borg.
I think before Picard, I think he was maybe vindictive and he was maybe prejudicial, but I don't know that he was necessarily compromised. And I think seeing Picard just sort of cracked him open in a way he was not prepared to be. And so maybe he is, but I mean, he's so fascinating. It's why I like him. Is like, there is no easy answer with Shaw. Is you just have to keep going back and looking at it again and again.
When I learned that Shaw was an engineer, it put a lot of things in place for me. And this is not a slight or any shade to engineers, but friends of mine that were engineers, they explained why they like engineers in Star Trek and why they like gravitating towards engineer personalities, because they like things that are orderly, that function, that make sense, that have a specific A to B through line. That they don't like things when they have, when things are, there are mishaps or mistakes, or they like things very, very, very clockwork-like. And look at what happened to Shaw as soon as Picard and Riker stepped onto his ship for nefarious reasons, for ulterior motives. His entire life got turned upside down, sideways, backwards, everything aside from like orderly, right? And yes, he sure did show like prejudicial treatment to Seven. That's absolutely sure, and that's where he's at fault. But everything since then, all he wanted to do was wake up, do Federation Day, go about his business, and run his ship. And now, 500 lives of his own crewmen are on the line. He's been critically injured and has been healed thanks to Beverly. Everything about him in his life has been turned upside down just because someone else interfered with his life. Someone else put a kink in the works of his perfectly fine day. Now a captain should be able to adjust to that. But at the same time, though, he's dealing with a lot, right? He's literally dealing with the enemy of the Federation 20 feet away from him, face to face. And how do you reconcile like all of that and kind of shoulder everything that's happening to his world at the same time, right? I know that we expect a lot from the paragon of the captain, right? But I think that also should be kind of segued into the paragon of the captain of the lead actor of a series, as opposed to a captain that's in the Federation of a ship, right? I think that's different. It's like, we're not talking about Archer. We're not talking about Janeway, right? Those discussions probably would have a little bit more weight and merit when it comes to like personality shifts. We're talking to a captain we've never heard before, probably is perfectly fine, saying, I just don't want to be in the spotlight. I want to run a tight ship, and I want it to be clean. I want my floors to be super shiny, right? And go about my day. So
he sounds like, I feel like I would be like that if I was a captain. Like, I don't want any surprises. I just want things to be neat and tidy and orderly.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, you know what? I understand that we hold the captain's characters up to a certain level, but I also think that he's a great way of showing that no two captains are the same, and that there are extenuating circumstances that may affect the captain that not everyone knows about, not even, say, if they were cleared, by Starfleet to be able to serve in that role. I think that shows that, I think that drives a lot of empathy toward the character. But that, again, that's just
no,
how I see the character.
Definitely agree with you. I think it's worth noting that Shaw is essentially our first post-Dominion War captain that we've really spent time with. And I think because of that, he sort of represents sort of the way the Federation has, fallen off. And I think we're going to see through him the way we sort of step back into the light by the end of the season. Is that he starts here so that he can move forward and he can improve.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see.
There's a lot of people in the chat pointing out that Shaw did step down, but he did not step down for any sort of emotionally compromised reasons. He stepped down because he was catastrophically injured, which is different.
Yeah, he said that Riker is going to be Captain Pro Tem. He had basically his shin was sticking out of his leg, and he was about to bleed to death. So, if you could see that, because the lighting was a little on the darker side. Just a little.
So, one of my notes is, I wish the bridge was brighter. I get the moody lighting, but I liked being able to see the actors.
We got time for like one last comment from you, Chris, and we're going to be able to move on to our next caller.
I think I saw this right. When the scene when Seven comes in to talk to Shaw about like the changeling, before she comes in, he's sharpening his knife on his cast, I think, which is just very hardcore. Like, power move. Good for you.
Yeah, he's and that knife, that was no butter knife.
That was a hefty knife too. I was like, man, okay. All right, get it.
Well, he's from Chicago. Maybe he's going to use that to cut his deep dish pizza. Who knows? All right.
I love that he's from Chicago because Todd is from Chicago.
Yeah. He's leaning into his Chicagoan really heavily, which is great. Yeah. All right, Chris. Well, thanks for calling in. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. And looking forward to seeing you again.
All right. See you around.
All righty. So before we're close to the bottom half of the hour, so I'm going to take this opportunity now because I don't want to cut Cosmo off in the middle of his call. I really don't want to do that. So I'm going to jump right into talking about one of our sponsors for this episode, and that is Star Trek Spirits. Now, for Holly, for you, and for, say, the rest of our audience, going all the way back to, say, episode 2, Disengage. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that wonderful shot of Ed Spleris, Jack Crusher, trying to bribe the Fenris Ranger with what? Nice.
Well, some nice alcohol.
Yeah. So those were like really wonderful close-up shots, screen-accurate shots of Romulan ale. And our friends at Star Trek Spirits, well, they produce a screen-accurate replica of that Romulan ale bottle, and it's filled with either one of two spirits. You can either get an incredible Romulan rye, which is just like a wonderful high quality mesh bill of a rye. And then you also have the vodka. And remember, these bottles, they are screen accurate. They're limited edition bottles. They're individually numbered. It's taken them years to make and produce. Like how good these bottles are. You can see it in the graphics package that Earl is flashing across the screen right now. And you can see how different the colors are. You have kind of like this midnight blue screen accurate Romulan rye, which is kind of blue you saw in the Enterprise incident when Spock was having his drinks, with Romulan Commander, or say like the Romulan vodka, which you kind of like saw like in Star Trek 6 when they're all having dinner together and the Romulan ale was a little more on the paler side. Each one of these has been custom designed because they have been working together. They, meaning Star Trek spirits, have been working together with Star Trek prop masters and using the original designs to get that front artwork gold foil stamped application accurate.
They spent so much time on it too, because I saw a couple of their steps when they were actually developing the bottles and fine tuning them, and they spent a lot of time on it. They paid very close attention to detail.
Yeah. So also, it's very special about this bottle, and you could probably see it if you look at the graphics package right now. You can see that they're being picked up by the really just incredibly well engineered, they call it a Vino seal glass topper. So it keeps that angel's share from escaping the bottle so that you don't lose too much of that wonderful spirit inside. And there's not more I can say, but I can gush about this for the rest of the episode. But if you really want to take a look at it, go to StarTrekSpirits.com today for either the Romulan Ale Vodka or the Romulan Rye or both. You can take 10% off your order with the special code Roddenberry at checkout. That's at StarTrekSpirits.com. And if you want to go that extra mile and make sure that you get another screen accurate item, you can go to toink.com and you can use the tumblers that they have there that accompany this wonderful Federation decanter. You can display your Romulan Ale or your Romulan Vodka with those. And also, if you take a look at the glasses that Jack and Jean-Luc are using in this episode to drink their Irish whiskey, those are the same tumblers that they sell on toink.com with that decanter.
Very heavy, very thick glass, really beautifully designed.
So there you go. Make your stuff screen accurate. You can collect the stuff that you actually see on screen using toink.com and their 15% off discount when you use the code Roddenberry. And then, of course, StarTrekSpirits.com. You can take 10% off your order with that same code, Roddenberry. Thanks, everyone, for listening to that. I hope you enjoy the products that you're eventually going to order, because I know you want to. All right.
I have them.
So
I have both of them.
I've enjoyed them. They're fantastic. I have to recharge my stock. All right, let's get to Cosmo. Thanks, Cosmo, for being patient. And what's going on in the background of your screen? That's amazing.
Got a starship.
Yeah, James wanted to show off his Playmates Enterprise 1701.
Awesome.
And it's pretty darn cool. It's surprisingly well made. Push the button, James.
Screen accurate sounds and lights.
Yeah, I'm really impressed. And it was under $40. I mean, that's what I was paying back in my childhood for the TNG toys. So really cool toy. Thank you, James.
Love it. Thank you, James. Good to see you, buddy.
Alexa, like 30. So just wanted to, there we go. Got my Titan lights.
Titan lighting.
Yes. I go down to like 5. So I just wanted to weigh in on the language thing. And I'm a former football coach and former bouncer at some really bad nightclubs. So I'm used to profanity. And I've enjoyed a Quentin Tarantino movie or two. So that doesn't normally bug me, but it has been rubbing me wrong in this season of Picard. And I think I figured out why. Because, like Holly said, they were on broadcast television. They couldn't. But that doesn't change the fact we had 170 hours plus the movies with these characters. And so hearing a character like Picard dropping F-bombs just is uncharacteristic. Now, if you want to have Michael Burnham cussing, she's a new character, relatively new character, and then it's not out of character. And they could have had him swear in First Contact. That's a movie. I think they're allowed one F-bomb a movie or SH bombs. And in that scene where he gets mad at Worf and says, "I'm not going to effing blow up the ship," that wouldn't have rubbed me wrong. And not a big deal. I'm really enjoying the season, but Shaw saying some foul language. Again, he's a new character, so it's not out of character for him. And we go back to like Voyager. If Tom Paris, he would not surprise me that on the holodeck in that French bar, he's got a sailor mouth, but there's some
dream. Yeah.
I can't imagine Catherine Janeway talking like that. And same thing with Jean-Luc. So it's just the characters. And
is it like hearing a lyric that's not supposed to be there? You know the song backwards and forwards, and all of a sudden an interpretation of that song and someone adds like their own spin lyric on it. You're like, wait a second, that's not supposed to be there. And it just kind of, it kicks your brain like just out of it.
Yeah. And modern Star Trek has, set the precedence that we're on streaming. We're going to incorporate some language, and I have no problem with it. And a lot of the writing has made the dialogue a little more modern, and I don't have a particular problem with that either. But it does kind of, like you said, snap me back to modern reality. And it'd be like if I was watching Lord of the Rings and Gandalf, instead of "you shall not pass," said "you're not going to effing pass." And that's going to bring me back to modern and take me out of Middle Earth. So again, not a big deal. I'm still really enjoying the season, and like you said, Frakes has been the MVP so far. He's been awesome. He's been such a warm presence on screen, and I'm just so delighted to have every minute with him. And so same with Worf. Dorn has such great comedic timing. I mean, even on rewatches, and you can see the lines coming, but I still laugh every time. He's just so gosh darn good. And here, I'm so up for more Worf moving forward if there is a spinoff. I know he's wanted the Captain Worf thing for a while, but here's my pitch. After whatever is resolved here, Worf realizes the Federation still is in danger, and he gets involved with Section 31, and it's his mission to bring honor and a conscience to Section 31, which it's never had. And because he, knew what Julian went through back in Deep Space Nine, and so he tries to reform Section 31 because he thinks it is still necessary, but not at the shady levels they were going through. So that's my pitch for future Worf.
Does that mean that we would want that our Section 31 TV show would be Worf instead of Georgiou, who, if you guys don't know, won an Academy Award last night?
Yeah, I think she's, like Shaw said, she's out of our pay grade now.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that, and I even said that yesterday. I went to a cheese and cider tasting event with a friend of mine, and was like, because we were talking about who we wanted to win, and I was like, I want her to win. If she wins, though, like, I don't think Section 31 is going to happen. But we can have Section 31 with Worf. That's a great idea.
Right. I dig it. I dig it.
One last thought I had before I go. I know the marketing team has to do marketing things. And as we look forward to the last 6 episodes, I really wish I didn't know Moriarty was coming. And I mean, I was super geeked when I saw him in the trailer. But now the fact that I know he's coming and that we have to fit Brent Spiner in and we have to fit Moriarty, I just wish we were 95% of us were going to watch this no matter what. You just got to tell us, hey, the TNG cast is reuniting. I'm there. I don't need many more details. And so I just wish that hadn't been shared with us. But
if I didn't know that, and because of the trailer, and he just popped up in an episode, as a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes stuff and as a huge fan of those episodes specifically of TNG, I would have lost my mind. It is kind of disappointing that we know he's going to crop up at some point.
Yeah,
I mean, props to them for keeping the Changeling secret, though, because that was a good
reveal. Yeah, it really was.
But imagine if they had put that in the trailer. Worf saying in the trailer, "How long have you been away from the Great Link?" Yeah. But marketing's got to market. So
yeah, it's an interesting tightrope that they're walking right now between, again, the fan base that Terry Matalas definitely wants to treat to, like, a lot of these cameos and a lot of these references, versus a new audience that you still have to tell a complete and robust story to. So I get it. I understand what you're saying, and I kind of wish a lot of these appearances came organically, because now we're thinking about, okay, so when's Brent going to show up? When's Moriarty going to show up? When are their cameos or appearances going to happen in the next 5 episodes or 6 episodes? And that kind of maybe takes away from the oh gosh moment, when they finally appear. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen, because the Changeling thing, I was like, what? I felt like Leonardo DiCaprio, and that mean, like, there it is, right? There it is. There's the Changeling. So that was fun. But I hope that the way that they do it, the execution of it is fun, is earned, right? Because that's, even though we know it's coming, we don't know how, and maybe it's all about the how. And I think that'll be fun, when it happens, if they do it right. And so far, they're doing it pretty darn right, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, Cosmo, any last thoughts before we let you go?
Last thought, I really appreciate the visual effects and the sound effects, especially the sound effects. Torpedoes sound like torpedoes. It's all very well done, a little bit futurized, but just there's nothing that stood out at me like, well, that's a funny choice. It's all just been great, and bravo so far in the season.
Yeah. And we got good old space jellyfish again, and we did. I think they're prettier than Encounter at Farpoint jellyfish.
Farpoint.
Yes.
Thank you, Picard, for the reference. All right, thanks, Cosmo.
Thanks, guys.
We'll talk to you later, man. Good seeing you. What's up, Alan? What you got for us, buddy? What's happening?
Oh, yes, space jellyfish. I understand that preference.
Yes.
Farpoint.
Yeah,
remember that. Yeah.
Yes. I haven't forgotten that part yet. But, yes, first off, you guys just got done talking about it, but all hail the Empress.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the Empress really is everywhere, all the time, doing everything.
All at once.
All of those things.
So glad she won.
And yeah, if it's, I don't know, if it costs us the Section 31 show, there we go.
That's, I mean, if we lose her, for greater motion picture projects or something else, I think that's okay. I think that if Section 31 moves forward, I think that the guys back, the people back there that are doing the work will find a way around it and hopefully give us something that's great.
And if it's not, Section 31 with her or Section 31 with Worf, there could be. I mean, we still have. I'm blanking on his name, but our guy from Discovery season 1.
Shazad
Klingon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shaz. Yeah.
He's there.
I mean, there's options, but congratulations, well earned. This is the first time I watched the Oscars in a long time, and what do you know? They nominate a film that I've seen and that I liked, and there you go.
That's the key. All we need to do is make sure that there are films out there that you've seen and you like, and
exactly,
you're going to get your Oscar. So
there you go.
That's the key. That's the secret. Alan, I remember when we were talking to you about Picard earlier on, and you were saying that it felt formulaic. I'm kind of like extrapolating what you said from the first 2 episodes.
Sure.
You felt that there was a little bit of a formulaic thing that was going on that was concerning you. Do you think that you've gotten past that, or we've gotten past that at this time? Wrapping up this arc.
I think that this episode in particular really sort of clicked into gear for me. It's sort of been a slow build up for me this season, and it's not like I disliked those first couple episodes, but it was just sort of like, sort of a weird disconnect between what I was seeing and what I sort of got from the audience, maybe, and what I was getting from the show. It's like, okay, where does this work? This feels like this is the shows that I sort of was expecting, given everybody saying, oh, wow, this is great. This is the best Star Trek for a while. I think this might have been the best episode of Picard, full stop, thus far, all 3 seasons.
Anything in particular that elevated it to that level?
I liked, obviously, you guys mentioned the whole Shaw scene. Todd's amazing as a fellow DS from Chicago, or at least the suburbs in my case, represent.
There you go.
Good to go.
My only issue with the Shaw scene was that did anybody else think that it was weird that it was like, oh, we have 4 hours until we all die? It's like waiting for the Titanic to go down. But they all were just like, oh, we're just going to go to the holodeck and like not actively work on maybe solving this problem. That was the only thing that was bizarre to me. It's like, yeah, let's just go to the holodeck.
Would they have been considered
a little bit?
You know?
I don't know if they're off duty, but I mean, Picard does say that the reason why the holodeck was working is because it's like on its own separate cell,
Right.
and it was for that reason. It was to keep people sane when there was like a no-win scenario. But I mean, 4 hours is a long time. I feel like they could have been working on something.
Well, I'm sure if Jellicoe was on board, he would have stuck them on some kind of extra shift.
Yeah. Well, and there were people working on it, just not those half a dozen people who showed up halfway through Picard's, his heartfelt scene, his bonding moment.
Yeah. Although there was a Vulcan in the background whose haircut I take exception with. It was awful. I don't know. I don't know. I think I remember Vulcan. That wig.
It was weird. No. It was very culinary, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not typical.
You don't know.
Vulcan.
Maybe he just did culinar.
That could be. Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't know. It was just strange. Yeah.
Other strong points. Just the again, I agree with what was said earlier about Jonathan Frakes. This is his best work as Riker, I think, in all of Star Trek. And you don't want to give the actor all the credit. I mean, the director has to have a part of it too, and so a little bit of credit should go to Jonathan Frakes.
Hey, how about that?
For that. But my God, Picard and his moments, just it was almost a little bit funny when he's giving the rousing speech to the cadets 5 years ago, and then flash cut to him, just like you could almost hear the boom,
right,
of the
recognition moment,
the flash cut. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did anybody else notice in 10 Forward that there is a painted photo of Picard and Guinan in what looks like the Nexus to me?
Okay. Atop the bar, right?
And I was like, who took that picture? Or did Guinan just, have somebody paint it from, like, who? It's just, it was weird. I was like, the Nexus was like a dream. It was like a fever dream.
Nexus selfie cam. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Selfie stick in the Nexus.
Yeah.
You can get anything you want.
Jack from Titanic was also in the Nexus.
Yeah.
We have
he painted them like one of his French girls.
We have just a few more callers left, Alan. So is there anything else that you would like to say before we can get on to Cherie?
No, just very excited that everything's, like I said, everything's sort of kicking into gear. I liked how this resolved. I liked the fact that everything tied into that meal from 5 years ago. Emotionally, it was just a very solid episode, and the Bajoran flaw in this was the bucket, but I'll let somebody else deal with that.
Right.
Ah, yes, the hidden changeling bucket. Did anybody notice that it was hidden like the phaser on Overload in the Conscience of the King?
That, and then like the boots in Star Trek 6.
Yeah.
There's always a panel when you need one.
Exactly.
Yeah. Too many hiding spaces. Too many hiding spaces on Star Trek, apparently.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for calling in, buddy.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. All right, Cherie, what do you have for us? What's going on?
Hey. So many things, but
okay, so your volume was you were so excited your volume cut out on us.
Okay, I'm very excited about the space jellyfish.
Space jellyfish, all right, okay.
Space jellyfish. I love
Good
the
old
space jellyfish. That made me so happy.
I liked that they were smaller. They felt more realistic.
I know. And there were a lot of them. They reminded me of, I just watched this episode of Voyager where they went through a cloud of like all these little like singular cellular organisms that were kind of sticking to Voyager and kind of attracted to Voyager as a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was like a cloud of them. It wasn't just like a single one.
I feel like that seems vaguely familiar. I've been rewatching Voyager recently.
Yeah.
But I can't specifically recall that episode.
I almost thought that they were going to do like little bitty Farpoint aliens, like little jellyfishes, like floating around, like the actual Farpoint. But the actual like Farpoint jellyfish.
Well, I mean, to be fair,
I think this is the 4-point jellyfish. It's just
they're just babies,
modernized.
Oh, okay.
And they're smaller because they're baby. They could be the same ones. We don't know.
Yeah,
be the same
I thought they were going to look like the big kind of Man of War dome, like when it floated up. So I don't know.
But those were adult space jellyfish. These are babies.
Yeah,
I'm excited about them either way.
Jellyfish.
New life forms, right? Like Beverly said, loved it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that part, and I loved the kind of like this is like also kind of nice that even though it's like part of like the overarching story, this episode by itself, like you can watch it again and it's just about like it has like a sort of arch of its own. And I really like episodes like that. Like I don't mind if there's an overarching story, but I prefer if it has kind of like a beginning and an end of its own within the episode. So like I can go back and just watch this episode without feeling like I have to watch the whole season.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the ongoing part of the storyline is the fact that we see Jack at the end and there's that whole thing with the red and find me. And so I do like that there was two aspects of storytelling and that, they actually bookended something the way that we're used to in bottle episodes, but that they're continuing the story with like a new, what's going on here?
I think the red woman wasn't Rachel Garrett. I think the red woman is different because of what Jack is seeing. Like there's a lot of red in his dreams, right? And I think that eventually there's going to be something that ties into a different red woman and not the statue of Rachel Garrett that we saw on that one planet.
And what would you call that?
Red herring.
Yay!
Yes. I passed Holly's test. Oh my God, I feel so good right now.
What do you call it? What? Sorry, the red what?
A red herring. A misdirect in narrative structure.
It's a misdirect.
Yeah. Maybe that's why we have Moriarty coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Teach us about red herring.
So you dug the space.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, you dug the space jellyfish. What else?
So until this episode, like I know everybody else had really liked Todd Stashwick's performance. I didn't like dislike him, but I have this like contrary nature that like whenever everybody likes something, sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if it's that great. But in this episode, I am 100% sold. His performance in this episode was amazing. The monologue about Wolf 359, his clear PTSD. I think that actor did an amazing job, and I like 100% bought everything. And like he is kind of like a lovable, terrible person. Like he's a terrible person, but fun to watch.
He's a wonderfully flawed character, right?
Yeah.
He's a lovable jerk.
Yeah, and I think with Todd Stashwick coming in, I don't know him from really anything. I've never seen him before. So I know that a lot of people out there have, but I've never seen him. So he owns Shaw for me. So, live or die, he's making this character his own for me. And I think for a lot of other people too. And it's easy just kind of like, just watch him kind of like just unfold over the course of these episodes. Like at the very first episode when he sat there and he was like, giving Picard and Riker a hard time, I'm like, all right, what's up with this guy? And then every episode there's just like one pivotal scene where you just see more and more. And in this one you're just like, that look where he's he has his hand on his cheek and he's just staring at Picard with that one eye. It's kind of like the telltale sign, like Poe's story about the eye that was like, staring through the floor and you can hear the heartbeat and it's just taunting this, the guy who buried this guy alive. He's just like, I know that you're out there and you're never going to like get relief from me. That's like, that was him, that Shaw. Like, I'm never going to let you not remember what you did to 11,000 people. Right.
Yeah. And I also think though that like, I appreciate that he is self-aware. Like he called himself like a bad person. Like he kind of acknowledges it basically. He's like, he doesn't think he's a good person. And part of that is like the survivor's guilt, which is interesting. It's almost as if it like, you kind of got to wonder if he's being a bad person on purpose because of survivor's guilt. He like doesn't believe that he deserves to live. And thus like, he's kind of like leading into that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yep. One last thought, Sherry, before we let you go. We have one more caller to get to.
I loved that Vadic is actually tied in with the changelings in this. So,
interesting, huh?
I think, like, it's funny because, like, I thought right away that she was a changeling when she did the cut her hand off and everything. But my sister wasn't sure about it for a little while. She came around to be like, "Yeah, you're probably right. She's probably a changeling." But what do you guys think about, like?
I think that she's a new Vorta, a new type of Vorta.
I was not surprised that they're making her a changeling. That doesn't surprise me. What I have more questions about is the scarring on her face, because that's the same scarring that we saw on Sneed's face before his head got chopped off. So I have more questions about her that I think is going to be more surprising than just that she's also a changeling.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's see what the chat has to say. Hopefully you got an answer for us sometime. But Sherry, we're going to have to let you go. Thanks for calling. Great seeing you again, as always. And we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye. And coming up as Anchorman, we have John Arminio.
In the blue room.
Hey there.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. How's it going?
Good, man. It's been a while. So how have you been? How are you enjoying Picard?
This season has been fantastic. I think far superior to the first two seasons, which made me mad in a variety of ways. But I just have to echo everybody's praise for, especially this episode. I thought the acting was great. Frakes, his directing and acting in particular. But I do hope we get some of that emotional resonance that Frakes was able to give us in this performance with Marina Sirtis. Like, I hope we get to see them act together as the mourning parents of a dead child, instead of just having Riker mourn via Picard.
Yeah.
Because if we don't get that sort of payoff, it's another echo of how Troy was sort of like underwritten or written out of Next Generation in a lot of ways. And I think as the mother of this child, she deserves to mourn just as much as Riker does. And so I'm just hoping we get to see her featured more prominently in future episodes.
Yeah, I really did love the scene at the end where he was trying.
Yeah.
And I think that's all she really wanted him to do is just to try, right? Mm-hmm. To try and access those feelings, because they've been through so much together, and in turn, like as the audience, we've been on this same emotional kind of like journey with them, and just to see them torn apart because he's lost the capacity to feel, and all she does is feel. It's such an interesting contrast in this relationship because of all the way back to Encounter at Farpoint, when they first came on screen together, and it's heartbreaking because it just seems so real. I think that's the one thing that really kind of like just took me aback, took the wind out of my sails, is how real they feel together. Like before, it was very scripted and very well acted, but now they just feel real. They feel like they're just so seasoned and so settled into an actual real relationship that it's hard to separate their characters versus kind of like the real emotions of if these two people were actually real. And it's nice to see that, that uncanny valley be bridged between, fiction and reality. I think that's why it's so emotional.
Yeah, I think with the ages of these characters and these actors, they bring a resonance that they sort of couldn't bring as younger people, as younger actors, because there's just all this tragedy they've experienced. And I think, that was some of the weakness of the first two seasons, is that when we first meet Riker and Troy in the first season, it's like, oh, by the way, there's a dead child that we buried that you didn't see, and we just sort of like move on. And so I think it's a credit to the writing staff of the season that they're sort of trying to rope in, this backstory that we just kind of glossed over with the present plot. And I think so far they're doing a pretty exceptional job of that.
How do you feel about kind of like this obvious kind of like demarcation between seasons 2 and 3, where season 3 is specifically being done and manufactured in a way that is supposed to be the next generation, like season 8.
I mean, mixed feelings. I think, anytime, I think both, a lot of these legacy franchises are having trouble with how far can we take the story with nostalgia and how much should we move forward? How much are we going to alienate fans if we move forward? But we also need to gain new fans with new stories. And, these actors, especially Patrick Stewart, they can't go forever. But I think when it's executed this well, I can't really argue with the results. If you had just described the story to me without me seeing it, I would probably have dismissed it. But I was pretty dismissive of A Strange New Worlds before I saw it, and I love the hell out of that first season. So I think as long as you're executing well, then I think I'm all for it. I think one thing that I have been thinking about, I've made no secret of the sort of sour taste Deep Space Nine left with me. Mm-hmm. But I am wondering if Deep Space Nine fans are feeling left out in the cold because, the Dominion War and the Changelings featured so heavily in the ongoing story of Deep Space Nine. And now it seems like TNG fans and the TNG cast are going to be leaving the final stamp on the story of the Changelings, because I haven't heard any sort of revamp of Deep Space Nine characters, or like there's comic books of Cisco coming back, but there's certainly no Cisco story coming. Somebody mentioned in the chat, where's Miles O'Brien and all these cameos? So it seems like...
Where's Julian?
Yeah. Yeah, if we're going to have Section 31, why not get Bashir in there? So it just seems strange that if we're going to introduce the Changelings and bring back all these cast members, we're bringing no one from a lot of people's favorite Star Trek show.
But we did get to see a picture of Renee in this episode, which I appreciated.
Which was great. That was like season 1, Odo, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were still a little on the not Changeling side. So to interpret what you're saying, just to boil it down, so you're saying that it's possible that Riker is going to once again co-opt another series possible finale with a next generation story as opposed to the actual series story completing that actual story. I've never seen that done before in Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mean,
for the absolute first time.
Yeah. I mean, those were different voyages. These are completely new voyages. So those were the voyages. I don't know about what's going to happen with this series. I'm being completely facetious with Enterprise. Everyone knows that. So we are going a little late, but I wanted to give you one more nugget or two to share before we wrap up the show.
Just one more shout out to Shaw and his character, because when he started his monologue about Wolf 359, it's like, oh, it's another guy who's pissed off at Picard for this thing that happened, 30 years ago. But by the end of it, I was heartbroken. So I just think it's a testament to how one well-written new character can just change the paradigm of this show that's been on for decades. And so, credit to, again, the writer and the performers for giving us Star Trek fans a new character we can love and hate and love to hate.
Well, he's generating a lot of chat, which is great because it's nice that we have a new character to be able to kind of dissect and kind of figure out what's going on with him. And I think for all his credit, I think that Todd he's just really stepped into the role kind of fearlessly, and is making this character one for the books, right? I really don't have much more to say. It's going to be interesting to see where he is. Yeah. And I think that it's I don't know, Holly, maybe you feel differently, but where Shaw I think is succeeding as a new character, I don't think that they've actually given that kind of quality of writing to Ed Speleris, because his Jack Crusher is kind of flat on the page right now.
Right. Well, I mean, but we are learning. I feel like with both of them, we're going to get small pieces of information about their background. I mean, we saw the scene, which is why I understood why they were in 10 Forward, even though they were in a crisis. But it was to tie in the fact that, Jack decided not to know his father. And as it turns out, it's because Picard said something kind of terrible, not knowing that was his son.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they're just these tidbits that are being dropped. Obviously, we know more about Shaw at this point, but I feel like the writers are going to handle Jack the same way.
Well, he's probably a little bit more long game, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. They're both long game that we're going to learn about their pasts. So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
I love character development.
Me too.
And just real quick, in addition to the character development, which what Holly was saying is that's something that I don't think Picard actually believes, because we've seen how broken he was, when he lost his family in Star Trek Generations, and he's certainly shown regret for never having children. So that's him living the performance of Picard for these cadets. And because he couldn't be honest with them in that moment, he, as a result, could not be honest with his son or himself. So I thought, for a character that we've seen decades of development with, it was another great piece of characterization. So I really appreciated that.
Yep. On that note, perfect. I think that's a perfect way to end the show. Thank you, John, that's a fantastic insight.
Thank you.
Glad to see you on the show again. I hope to see you again sometime soon. And that's it. That's our show. That's a fast hour, isn't it, Holly?
Yeah, always. I'm like, how are we going to squeeze everything in? And we always do it. We always get to discuss everything that we want to discuss, and there's no awkward gaps. It's always surprising to me that we have endless things to talk about.
Well, I think that's great about the new series. It always, again, it gives us these characters that we think we know, then we end up finding something new, sometimes like the F-bomb, sometimes surprising, sometimes in a brand new character. And I think that right now, for the first couple episodes, I was a little apprehensive, but after 3 and 4, like I said, this is kind of Frakes just he's just doing double duty, and he's doing it well. And I hope that momentum goes into episode 5, which Holly and John are going to talk about next week. So here we are. Just want to let you know that Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production on Mission Log and Mission Log Live is done by the Earl of the Green of the Room. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from Roddenberry Podcasts. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/Mission Log. Thanks, Holly, for being here. Thank you for this very quick hour. It was awesome. It was jam-packed. It was a lot of fun with these really awesome discussions. And thank you to all of you in the chat for being here. We look forward to reviewing the next episode of Star Trek Picard with Holly and John next week on Mission Log Live. And we'll see you. Be good, be safe, and enjoy the next episode.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.